my yarny friends, I'm Sara Sach. Welcome or welcome back to another edition of This or That. And we're actually doing a this or that video today. Thank you for coming, and I hope that this video will be informative for you. And what it is I've gotten a lot of questions about stitches that they learned a certain name, and then somebody wrote a pattern and they changed the name of the stitch. And that's happened a lot recently. A lot of people who have been crocheting as long as I have learned a lot of the older names of what they were called. And then they go to work a pattern and they're like, that's the same stitch that's called something else. And so we're going to talk about one of those stitches today. And I'm hoping to be able to do a little bit of a series about that particular subject because it can be very confusing. All right, so what is our topic for today? All right, so the stitch that we're going to tackle today is it a spike stitch or a long double crochet? Or maybe a long single crochet? Or just a long stitch? It's been called lots of different things. I learned it as the long double crochet. Okay, and it's okay if you call it either one. I just want to show you, I'm going to do a demonstration about that particular stitch. But I looked it up, and let me tell you what it says. Is it a spike stitch or a long double crochet stitch? Two possibilities. Either a spike stitch or a slightly different long loop double crochet. A spike stitch is usually made at least one row below the row currently working on, and a long double crochet is when you insert the hook into the stitch and pull the loop down, and so it can be a little bit different. All right, so I'm going to show you over here with my camera. I have a demo I'm going to show you that's already printed out, and then I'm also going to demonstrate it as well. Okay, all righty. So I printed this illustration off from the Crochet for Dummies website. Okay, that's where it comes from. And here we have some rows of stitching. And here is where you're working your double crochets. Here's your crochet hook where you're working your double crochets. We normally stitch up here, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to come down below and see how they came down below and work their stitch. When I first looked at this, I thought this is going to be confusing, but I wanted to show it to you anyway. All right, so let me show you a little demo with an actual swatch. All right, so I've got some yarn here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and chain 3. This was a swatch off something else, obviously. So I'm going to turn my work. I'm going to go ahead and double crochet. I'm going to switch colors because I want you to be able to see the difference. All right, so here's some double crochet stitches. I'm going to grab this yellow. I'm going to bring that in on the last. That way we have a nice crisp stitch to see. All right, so now on this demo, we've been working our double crochets normally in the double crochet stitches. To work a long double crochet, you still go over your hook and you're going to come down below and you're going to have to loosen up just a little bit and work that double crochet. Now this can also be worked as a single crochet if you're working rows of single crochet. All right, now a long double crochet can also be made longer. All right, so I'm going to go over. I'm going to come all the way down to this row. And you can see I'm pulling and looping that so that it's loose and finish my double crochet. And this is where we get the idea of a spike stitch. Because when you work this stitch, they look like spikes. And so really, the double crochet spike stitch and the long double crochet are basically interchangeable. The only difference is usually a spike stitch, from what I read, only goes the same, where a long double crochet will go longer. But that's not always true, because I've seen it where they've called it a spike stitch, and they do 1, then 2, then all the way down to 3 with a really long double crochet stitch. And when you work these, you have to work it a little bit loose. There we go. Let it pull a little bit. And you still get that long spike stitch. Now, you can do this as a single crochet, all right? I'm going to go ahead and single crochet in this next stitch, all right? And now I'm going to do a long single crochet. It works the same. You're just doing it with single crochets, and you're still getting a spike stitch. And you can do it with a half double crochet as well, depending on what the pattern is asking you to do. And it's a really neat technique. I like it a lot. I think it's really pretty, and I think there's a lot of different things that you can do with it. There's also something called a long cluster stitch. And the reason I want to talk about that is we're going to be doing some cluster stitches in our pattern on Friday. All right, I'm going to work past this section here so that I have a solid double crochet. I'm just working over here, adding some single crochets. All right, now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to yarn over. I'm going to do a long one here, but I'm not going to finish it. Then I'll yarn over, and I'll do an even longer one, but I won't finish it. And you can do this with up to 5 or 6 different stitches, however many that you want. And then you yarn over, close the cluster, and now you have what's called a long double crochet cluster or spike stitch. And so spike stitches and long double crochets and long single crochets or long half double crochets have lots of different purposes. And so I know this can be very confusing, and there's a lot of stitches out there that I learned because I've been crocheting for almost 50 years now. Yeah, because I'm 63, or am I 62? I can't remember. Anywho, I've been crocheting for at least 45 years. And a lot of those stitches that I learned from library books, new books that have come out and new patterns that have come out in the last 10, 15 years, they changed the name of those stitches. And it's okay with me. I don't really mind. But it can be very confusing for people, especially people who are just learning. So remember that when you're working patterns, that sometimes crochet stitches have been changed. And remember, there is a difference between a stitch and a crochet pattern stitch. And what I mean by that is you have basic stitches like single crochet, slip stitches, double crochet, half double crochet, triple crochet stitches. Those are basic stitches. But then there are stitch patterns like this, where you're stitching long double crochets and there's a pattern that forms across the rows or around the rows. And so a stitch pattern and a stitch are two entirely different things. And so, to bottom line it, a spike stitch and a long double crochet stitch are pretty much the same thing. And single crochets can be done in a long stitch as well as a half double crochet, and even a triple can all have a long or spike stitch added to it. And it's a really neat technique. You can get some really neat looks. Just like I said, I did double crochets that are long, I did single crochets, and then I also showed you how to do a cluster stitch using those long or spike stitches. It's a neat technique to learn. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit because on our Friday video, our Friday Fun video, we're going to do where you make a leaf using a long or spike stitch. Long double crochet or spike stitch. And they're super fun. Once you learn how to do them, you'll think, oh, that's nothing to it. It's just a matter of getting used to pulling that yarn just a little bit so that it's not too puckered and not too droopy. okay? And so you may have to practice a little bit to get it right, but it's really worth it. And it's a great stitch, has lots of possibilities for lots of different crochet pattern techniques. So I hope you learned something off this one. I want to do more of these comparison from old names and new names and things like that so that we can learn those things, because remember, I want you to have a wonderful crochet experience. All right. Now, if you have any stitches or questions you want answered, feel free to comment. Comment anyway, because I love to read your comments. I do. And I try to answer every single one of them. If I don't have an answer, I'll try to find you one. Well, thanks for being with me today. And again, I hope you learned something, and have a wonderful week. And I'll see you next week for another edition of this or that, sometimes the other thing. Bye-bye now.